But I can give it to you right now. Just give me a second. You want to write it? You know the ID. You want to write it down? Is 997. Yeah, that's all. Okay. So we know Bezdar Hashem. First of all, Shavua Tov. Thanking everybody to put their time to come. I came late for two reasons. A rabbi has to be late, otherwise not a rabbi. But honestly, they said that some more time for people to get, especially the ones that keep, according to Rabbeinu Tam, the Shabbat finishes like half an hour later. So we're holding by the third commandment that Bez Hashem, you go through it. And the third commandment is do not say God's name in vain. Don't say God's name for no purpose, which basically, as the commentators explain, you have to have honor for God's name. If somebody has honor for God, doesn't want to disrespect it, so no one will mention his name for no reason. Basically, what the Torah, what God is telling us, after we enter with Him, do not disrespect or put down my name. What this teaches in general means that we're not really supposed to put down our spouses. Definitely, sometimes things happen that we don't like it to happen, but there's two parts to it. First of all, in front of children, we should never argue and put down our spouses. That's number one. It should never be done. If it's done, obviously, first of all, both parents lose respect in front of the kids. But worse than that, our kids will be able to get married. Even let's say if we are in so they always say our differences have to work out in private. When the children are not around, we should never involve them. But besides that, even if you are all alone, there are no children there, obviously, the reason to put them is discuss our differences, not this story. This true story that happened, I resent with that. There was a husband that I went shopping. The joke that I say, good husbands shop with their wives. Better husbands shop for their wives. So I don't know if men like that or not, but anyways. But the situation is, they went shopping, and then the woman obviously forgets to buy one of the cereal boxes that she really loves a lot. So it tells the husband, honey, could you please go pick up the cereal box that I like? Some men have problems, and my wife's thinking I get lost. Because if I find something on sale, I buy 10 of them till next year Pesach. So we have it there, even if you have no use for it. And besides, I get lost. You see all the sales you enjoy. And my wife goes, she buys in 1, 2, 3. She's in and out. So this guy gets lost. So the woman standing in line and the kids there, to punch in everything that she gets very nervous. So she turns around to the lady or the man behind her, and he says, look at these men. They go through the whole store to buy something. They can't even find the box that they need. So definitely she was, a little bit annoyed. But again, what did she gain in this story that happened? Nothing, except bring out the frustration and, putting down the husband. So again, if you have differences, we should speak to them nicely. But certain things that puts our spouses down, I spoke about this last time. There's a lot of nice that you can even learn when you go online, like Chabad.org or Aish.com. There's a lot of marriage counselors that they write. This is written by a lady, Mrs. Debbie Goodfreund. So if you want to look at the title, 8 things you should never say to your spouse, because these are things that puts them down. So you could research it yourself. And I just found a new article. They found 10 things, not just 8 things. But let's go through things that they write down that it should never be in the dictionary between a husband and wife. Let's go through a couple of them. Try to go through 8 of them. Number 1, let's say if our spouses make a mistake. So the first reaction we have, what is wrong with you? Basically what I'm saying, there's inherently something wrong with my spouse. There's nothing wrong with him or her. They made a mistake. When we say the word, what's wrong with you, like you're saying there's something inherently or inside them that is wrong or crooked. So they always say if something happens, let's not say that. Mistake happened, let's try to fix it. That's one of the words in the dictionary should never be said. What's wrong with you? Second one, imagine we ask our spouse to do it, and then they don't do it, or it's taking them too much time to do it. Our reaction is, forget it, I'll do it myself. Like the word, forget it, I'll do it myself. Not what can I do to help you? What with that, forget it, I'll do it myself. What I'm saying is, you know what, I have no patience for you, you're incompetent, you really can't do anything, forget it. Just forget, you're not made for this. Myself instead of you. So that's the second thing, that therapists always say should never be said. If they don't do their job, I want to help you. What could we do to get the thing done? Another thing that should never be in the dictionary, imagine the husband comes home late, or when the husband comes home, supper is not. So she tells him, you come home on time, or you never make supper ready on time. First of all, never is not true. Does the husband always come home late? She never makes supper on time. So the words aren't true. But in addition to that, definitely such words will never motivate the person to do what he's supposed to do. Because the reaction would be the wife or husband feels, no matter what I do, I'm never good. The days that I make the supper on time, he doesn't recognize that. Doesn't say thank you for making the supper on time. The days that he really works hard to come home on time, she doesn't recognize it. She says, you never come home on time. You never make supper ready. That means you're never good. So obviously these words don't motivate to become good. We should never use the word never or always. Another thing, imagine the wake supper. I don't know why men love food. Sorry. They always say that it's not important for them. But if they get fat, we tell the ladies to tell them there is more to love. Never criticize them. Many good husbands get fat because just in case their wives get pregnant, they don't want to feel, they're overweight. And then women lose their weight because they gave birth, they keep it for the next child. They still stay fat. So shouldn't feel bad. These are the good husbands. But anyways, putting all the jokes aside, imagine they come home and the food is not ready, or food is ready. Oh, that's all you made? That's it? That's all you made? Or let's say the husband goes shopping. Oh, that's all you bought? So, instead of, thanking them, this is wrong. Why? Because instead of thanking them, if they don't do enough based on our expectations, to show them, what you did is very nice. I appreciate it. But again, even if you criticize, next time, maybe we could do it better. But not to recognize the good that they did, criticize, that's all you got, obviously, uh, the person. And I think that many times it happens. Imagine the husband or the wife do something, and then they're criticized. So the simplest thing is, what, you're right, I'm sorry, I try not to make it happen again. But our reaction is, but you did the same thing yesterday. I didn't, you did the same wrong thing yesterday. So that's when the fight continues. So if, let's say, we did something wrong and we did something wrong, the best thing is to accept it. The teacher that he said is always, it's good to be right. It's important to be right, but it's more important to have shalom bayit. You don't always have to be right. So if he says, you did something wrong, accept it and don't continue. Another thing is, many times, so far 5, is that enough or one more? Anyways, that just bothering you. There's another one, let's say our spouse asks us something, we say, whatever. I didn't realize this. Let's say they say, what kind of supper do you need? Well, sometimes really we mean whatever, but in the eyes of our spouse, maybe whatever means, I'm not in the mood of talking to you, whatever, just leave me alone. So they say it's better sometimes when we need things, we should actually say what we need instead of saying whatever. Number 6. Number 7, I guess going on vacation is important for some people. So let's say we never go anywhere, we never do anything. That's similar to the word never, but if you want to go on vacation, let's not put the burden on our spouse. If there are things that we like to do, why do we put the full burden on the shoulder of our spouse? You want to go on vacation, so you never take me anywhere. Instead of complaining, let's plan to go on a vacation together. So don't blame me. The other one, and the worst one that actually should never be said, I think we spoke about it in the second commandment, when we tell our spouse, why can't you be like the other person? Why can't you cook like the other person? Yeah, why can't you be more like the other person? So obviously this thing, comparing our spouse to somebody else, is very hurtful And basically, what I'm saying is, I wish I wasn't married to you. I wish I was married to the other person, even though I'm not saying it, but that is the impression that goes out. So again, the third commandment that we should never put our spouses down. Part of is part of it is the vocabulary that we use. So these are the eight. You could actually check it in h.com, and the title is Eight Things You Should Never Say to Your Spouse. Now it's 10 things. Just wanted to clarify a couple things in this thing very quickly. Number one, even if when we say don't put your spouses down, it happens to be that I really do believe in going to therapy. I think as time goes on, more people believe that good therapists could actually be a blessing. If you say not supposed to put your spouses down, why do we push so much for therapy? But the answer is very simple. When we go to therapist, I'm not going there to put my spouse down. I just want to share a story with you before I say why go to a therapist. There was a couple that had a problem. So we send them to a therapist. So the therapist calls me, says, Rabbi, I don't want to see that couple. I said, why? So it says, because the husband called me and he said, doctor, makes a lot of trouble. Can you make her think like me? That's exactly what he said. So he says, if he's coming with such an attitude that his wife has to totally change, I don't want to see him. Anyways, we pushed, and actually he did see them, and he was able to help them a lot. Baruch Hashem. But again, we don't go to therapy to change our spouse or put them down. We go with respect. We tell the therapist, no, I love my spouse, I love my wife, I love my husband. We see many things eye to eye. There are certain areas that we don't agree with your guidance to help us. But I'm not going there to stand. And number two, we go for a purpose. We don't go there just to add frustration. It might happen. There's a lot of baggage, so you got to let your frustration go. But we don't go there just to let our frustration. We're going for a purpose. So that's why going to therapy is a good thing. Just a couple little advices. Whenever especially if you have newlyweds, people that just get married, and issues definitely do come. Number one, never discuss it with single people because they can't help you. They don't know anything. Besides that, if you see there's much problem, they get scared to get married. I'm not kidding. I don't want to go into it because I'm online right now, so people might find out what I'm talking about. But I've seen actually a couple of people that are, because when their friends got married, they always called them and they had trouble. So I told them, tell me, when your friend went on a cruise, did he call you? No. When they had this baby, they had a good time. Did they call you? No. So of course they only call you when they're miserable. When they're having a good time, they don't call you. So never discuss it, with people that are not married. Usually it's not advisable to discuss it with younger couples because they have the same trouble. Besides that, unfortunately, we live in a community that sometimes people figure out what they are. I'm going to share a story with you. There was this young lady that got married to a guy and they moved to Israel. I don't know if they were American, Israeli. The girl was from America. I don't know who the boy was, whether he was American or Israeli. Anyway, the rumors went around in America, the girl wants to get divorced. Mother calls up after 6 months. We're going to use a name that nobody gets offended. Everybody has a name Bela, right? Bela is Ashkenazi. Bela's here. Okay. So the mother calls and they say, Bela, we want to get divorced. She says, no. It says, well, in our town, everybody's saying that you're getting divorced. What was the story? When we get married, obviously in the beginning of adjustments, you got to get adjusted to married life. In addition to that, when they move to a new country, she has to learn a new language, find friends. He has to find a job because he moved to Israel. So one day, one of the friends from whatever, the Jewish school, Beis Yaakov, I don't know which school she went to, calls up and says, Bela, how are you doing? So she says, I'm miserable. I wish I was back home. These are the only words said. So now imagine if we married for 10 years, you will tell Bela, don't worry, I went through the same thing too. It's going to be good. Call me back in 6 months. I'll call you back in 6 months. I'm sure things will be better. But this young girl not being married, the way she interpreted the words, I wish I was back home, it means I wish I was divorced. I could come back home to my parents. So obviously she's not going to tell the mom of this girl, there's something wrong. Maybe you should call your daughter. She told her own mother. The way it works in the world, that this mother tells her best friend, the best friend tells the best friend. So after a few months, the last person that hears what's going on is the mother of people in Israel. It's a lesson not to invent people that are not proper people to speak to. So again, down. Sometimes I don't to go to Rabbi, Rebbe, better to go to but I never discuss it with people. I know I know somebody that could help. That's fine. This is the end of the third commandment. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to go to commandment, a very fun one. If there's any questions, please ask. Good. Not hard questions. Good. Well, I would definitely suggest I should go to a religious or at least religious-minded therapist that he knows the world of Torah. Those are probably the best ones. If somebody does not believe in the sanctity of marriage, he thinks marriage is just like eating breakfast. So you get married, you eat breakfast. I would never recommend such a person. But someone that does believe in the holiness of marriage, that it's a godly bond, as we spoke in the first time, such people usually do not say their own opinion. They definitely make sure that it's something that goes along with the Torah. That's my experience so far. That's what I know. Anyway, so going to commandment number 4, it says, remember the day of Shabbat and keep it holy. So this is going to take us a while to go through. It's a very, very fun one. There is a Ramban, the Nachmanides, and he made a beautiful comment. When he says, remember the day of Shabbat, what is he talking about? What's the Torah talking about? To remember the day of Shabbat on Shabbat, you don't have to remember it. You're living through Shabbat. Remembering is only possible if the person is not here. If you're sitting in front of me, I don't have to remember you, I see you. If you're absent, I don't see you, then there's a commandment, remember me. So when the Torah says, remember the day of Shabbat, the Ramban says what it means is remember Shabbat every single day. And actually, I think the Ramban holds this is a positive mitzvah of the Torah, according to him. We spoke about it last few weeks, that the Gemara says there is 613 commandments. The question is, what are the 613? So most rabbis agree what the 613 are. There's arguments in a few of them. So the Ramban holds remembering Shabbat every single day is one of the positive commandments. That's his opinion. And he says that's why in our prayers, when we pray, in the morning, for example, we say the psalm, the shir of Sunday, we say as an introduction, Hayom Yom Echad Be-Shabbat. That is the first day of the week. Now we use the word Shabbat, not Shavua. Usually the word for the week is Shavua. Nobody says tonight Shabbat Tov as a good week. We say Shavua Tov. So seemingly we should have said Hayom Yom Echad Be-Shavua. So we say Hayom Yom Echad Be-Shabbat. Shabbat has two meanings. Means Shabbat, seventh day. Shabbat also means the week. So the Ramban says the rabbis put it this way. So we have the merit to remember Shabbat every single day. That's a Ramban. So what does this teach us in a married life? That we should always make good memories. Honestly, that's what it means. Zachor, make good memories. Don't let our marriage, become very, boring. In the beginning, marriage is very exciting. Two new people living in the same house. Then after a while, it just becomes routine. We get up in the morning, we go to work, we come back home, I eat my supper. Good night, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep. There's no more excitement. And the truth is, unfortunately, in the United States, in Iran, I remember going back years ago, marriage only, divorce only happened if there was like an abuse. Nobody got divorced because I'm bored. Oh, I don't love my husband anymore. I don't love my wife anymore. I just don't feel the connection. That's not a reason to get divorced. But again, why does that happen? Because we don't bring any good memories, no excitements in our marriage. Again, I'm not saying it's a reason to get divorced. But obviously, what the Torah is telling us, when you make good memories, that brings us a lot closer. What that means, young couples go to Disneyland. I don't know. You go to Disneyland sometimes. What's that ride? You go down. There's water ride, and then you get afraid. You pick up your hands, take a picture, buy it, spend $10 for it, hang it up in your room. When a birthday comes, make exciting birthday. When your anniversary comes or something. You could always go on 800flowers.com, whatever it is, proflowers.com. Imagine your wife comes home and you see this package, beautiful flowers that you just bought for her. Little things These are really things that make good memories and brings excitement in our marriage. Also, sometimes good memories are if we help our spouses. I get there soon. And again, actually, there is one of these therapists in Israel. Some therapists are really blessed. I know one of them from Sherman Oaks, that if husband and wife are in trouble, so he could interrogate them or whatever, question them in 45 minutes. He could figure out if there's hope for them or not. He's a Jewish guy. So, anyways, there's one of them in Israel too. I mean, there's probably a lot of them. So this lady says when people have a lot of trouble and no other therapists can help them, they go to her. So she asks 4 or 5 questions. I don't know what they are. I do know. She asks them, tell me, how did you date? Right? Usually when you go on a date is the most exciting time. So she says, if they smile, so that shows they still have some good memories. If there's some good memories, then there's a hope to bring them back. But if he's going to ask them, how did you date? And it's like this, like emotions. They have no good memories. So then she says, probably it's almost impossible to bring them back. We also, find when children have anger against their parents. Again, I don't know too much about children. That's the next thing we are learning. But I remember when I went to a certain therapist, so when the kid was angry, they always told him, think of a time that you had a very fun time with your father or mother. And the kid closed his eyes and he was thinking about it. Honestly, I was watching him, smile came to his mouth, to his lips. He started smiling. You see, good memories bring us closer. Marriage always has ups and downs. So making these good memories brings us a lot closer during our tough times. It's very good, very important. Don't let our marriage to become a little or too much boring. There's a Rabbi Twersky. His name is Michal Twersky. He's a brother of Rabbi Yeshua. His name was Joshua. Avram Joshua Twersky. He was a big rabbi that just passed away more than a year ago. So he has a brother, Michal Twersky. He's an expert on marriage. So one time I was by one of his classes. He said a very funny statement. At least he seemed to be funny. He said, well, I want to tell all you men, love starts in the kitchen. So what is he talking about? Love starts in the kitchen. And he said, yeah, you can't get emotional when you go into the hiding chambers, when you go to your bedroom. If you find a dish that is dirty, wash it for your wife. If you find, a pair of socks on the floor, put it into the laundry room. Because you have to show that you love your spouse in the kitchen by doing little small things. So again, besides making good memories, honestly, doing little stuff, even though I feel it's not my job, but doing little things, so that brings good memories and actually strengthens our connection with each other. So that's what he meant. Love starts in the kitchen, meaning doing kind deeds to your spouse, just regular routine things brings us a lot closer. I really don't know why. This is like I found is the big when the wife asks the husband, "Can you take the garbage out?" Like men hate that, especially if you rush to go to work. So you got to make a deal. Please don't tell your husband to take the garbage out when he's rushing. Tell him when he comes back home after eat supper, so he won't be so upset. But again, really, why does that make them so upset? I don't know. It was actually it happened with one of the young guys that just went to Kollel. I just want to add, sometimes when we learn Torah, we feel because we are in Kollel, you're like above everything else. Everybody owes us everything. I'm sitting, learning Torah the whole day. I'm holier than thou. So you can't disturb me. I just have to sit and learn. Don't tell me what to do. So there was this Kollel guy that he went to his Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, I have a serious problem. My wife asks me, it's a true story, to take the garbage out. Isn't that below my dignity to take the garbage out? I'm a person that sits and learns Torah the whole day. So it's a serious halachic question in his mind. So the Rosh Hashiva said, you know what? Let me think about it. Maybe you're right. The next day, the Rosh Hashiva went and knocked on the door. So the guy opens the door and says, well, Rosh Hashiva, what are you doing here? It says, because I realized, yeah, it's below your dignity to take the garbage bag out. I came here to take it out myself. Give it to me. So he didn't have to give a lecture to the student. He himself came and took it. So he got the lesson. If my Shiva, my Rosh HaKollel, takes the garbage out, I can definitely do that. So again, doing this little stuff definitely helps. So this was the first part. Remember the day of Shabbat, making good memories. You're going to go Bezrat Hashem. So you're going to go Bezrat Hashem to the next part when he says, remember the day of Shabbat. Let's see what the day of Shabbat is. Every day you're always working, getting another dollar, paying another mortgage, taking the kids to school, come back from school. Really don't have that much time with our family. When Shabbat comes, so it's a time that actually you have time for God and our family. Right? How does Friday night work? The spouse, the wife makes all the food ready. Hopefully, Friday afternoon, before Shabbat, everything is ready. The husband takes the kids to shul, to the synagogue, to the Beit Knesset Friday night. Beautiful prayers. And when they come home, really, what happens at the Shabbat table? Okay, husband and wife talk. How was your week? Then, they talk with the kid. How was school? Bezrat Hashem, everybody has them married. When they have children, they send them to yeshiva, to whatever Hebrew day school. When the kids come home, it's a real pleasure. Tell me, what was the parsha of the week? You test your kids. That's what happens Friday night. You're spending time with the family. Also, Shabbat morning is the same thing. Always make this joke. I'm a Chabadnik, so I could make a joke about them. Chabad starts happening at 10 in the morning. Nobody gets up at 10 in the morning. So they have breakfast with their wife at home. Then they go to Beit Knesset. So they have even extra time with the family before. But again, officially, they pray late because they're supposed to learn Sidut before. In yeshiva, they learn Hasidic philosophy from 8 to 9:30. Then they start praying. Whatever it is, they prepare themselves for the prayers. But again, they even have people that go to Chabad shuls, they go to have a full breakfast without bread, obviously. With their family, then they go to shul. So then when you come back from shul at 11, 12 o'clock, especially in the summers, you have time with the family. After the children, you get a big stomach ache, you go to sleep. You get up like 5 in the afternoon, let's say. What are you going to do till 8 o'clock at night? So you go to Mincha at 6 to the class before. Honestly, these times are made to spend time with family. I honestly, I'm not talking about Charedim. The Charedim, yes, their lifestyle is that Shabbat is for learning, and I praise that. But I'm saying regular people, Shabbat is a time that you spend with your family. That's what it is all about. So the Shabbat tells us that you have to put time with your family. We had a few of the rabbis when they came. They said you should go on a date with your spouse at least once a week. That's what it told us. Very, very important. Why is it important to go out? Put time for your spouse. Obviously, in the first 2 years before children, it's very easy. They both come home. They have plenty of time. They get home at 6, 7 o'clock at night. You could go to Kollel for an hour and learn. You could come have his supper with his wife. You could talk, till 11 o'clock and go to sleep. But once we have children, that's where it becomes a little bit challenging because both parents focus on the kids. They don't have time for each other. So that's where the rabbis always told us, make sure that you put time for your spouse. Don't say I don't have time for you. Sorry. You have to put time to go out with them. There's actually an article in H.com. I think Mrs. Braverman wrote it, Muna Braverman. She writes articles. So with it, there's a picture of a lady that just gave birth, and she has the baby on the shoulder, and the husband is sitting very bored. The wife says, honey, I promise, after our kids will go, I'll take care of you. Next 15 years, don't talk to me. It's a very funny. She's an awesome writer. Emuna Braverman, you could find it in H.com. So now again, because we have children, doesn't mean, of course, they're the main thing. You got to take care of them. But doesn't mean that the husband is not a husband anymore and the wife is not a wife anymore. So again, we had many, many rabbis. I think one of them was Rabbi Morgenstein, that one from Eretz Israel, and he said you should definitely go out with your spouse once a week. Now, I'm not saying go to a restaurant and every week others. Post Biden, even one person has to go to eat fast to spend $50, $60. But it's not the money that you spend to eat. You could go to a coffee shop, you could go to a park. What we are saying is that I'm really saying my spouse is important to me. And right now, there's only God, me, and you, nobody else. Tell me how your week was. Another thing that we say in the synagogues, some of us are grandparents. I always tell the people, when their children get married, I say, remember, when you become a grandparent, you don't become a grandparent for free. You got to take care of the grandchildren. So your son and daughter-in-law, your daughter and son-in-law could go on a date once a week. Of course, they love to do that. Raising the grandchildren is more fun than raising the children. Because once they start making trouble, you call their parents, come and take them. You can't do that to your children. So you only enjoy them when it's good. When they start making trouble, you call your kids, come and pick them up. So there's one story, and I share it with everyone. This story is all over Chabad.org with a Chabad lady, I'm not sure. There was this guy that promised he's going to take his wife out. He never did. He was always too busy. And the wife said, you know what? One of your biggest supporters is not already Los Angeles. It's going to be LAX at the terminal for 4 hours. And he has to wait between planes. He wants to see from 2 to 4 o'clock. So, and this is the date that is coming. So the guy looks at his calendar, whatever, his cell phone, and he says, yeah, I'm not busy. So the date comes, he goes to the airport at the terminal, and he's sitting by the terminal. One of the biggest supporters gives him a lot of money. He's dressed up very well with the tie and everything. So when he's sitting, he sees nobody comes. He finds this wonderful, beautiful wife of his. That the wife is coming all dressed up with lots of makeup, and he sits in front of him. So he says, what's going on? Is this a joke? So he says, no, I just wanted to show you that I'm your biggest supporter. And I want you to spend the next 2 hours with me. So she was very smart. Didn't nag too much, She did it in a very professional way. But it was a great lesson for him. That really his biggest supporter is his own spouse. And he actually learned to spend time with his wife. My Rosh Yeshiva, should be healthy. His wife passed away a few years ago because of aneurysm. It was very, very, she was like a mother to us in yeshiva, to be honest. Anyway, so later on, when we went for Shiva to visit him, he was very busy with the yeshiva, day and night. So, when you become a Rosh Yeshiva in the beginning, they promise to pay for all the costs. But then afterwards, there's no money. The Rosh Yeshiva becomes the fundraiser. I'm sure Abba Moped is used to that. And so he was really teaching, giving shiurim, even fundraising. And then when we went to Shiva to visit him, he said that his wife told him once, his name is Ezra Binyamin. So it says, Ezra, spend time with me now, because the day will come that you will be sorry. He said it by the Shiva. He said, I didn't spend enough time with my spouse. Touched us. But that time, you're already married. So you knew what married life to a certain extent is all about. But again, while we have them, we should definitely spend time with them, not to get distracted with other stuff that is in our life. Bez Hashem, you're going to go to the third part. The third part, it says, keep the day of Shabbat holy. So, bringing Kedusha, holiness, in every part of our life is a very important thing. People that are not, they didn't study the Torah properly. They look at God as the government. Life was very good before government came, wasn't it? You could buy any toilet you want. You could build a house anywhere you want. Now they sit, in the Congress and they pass laws. You ask the way you want. You can't even buy the lights that you like. You have to buy a certain type of a light. So they said the best type of life with the government is you don't bother me, I don't bother you. Right? As long as government puts their nose in our life is the worst thing. So many people say, you know what, my relationship with God is you don't bother me, I don't bother you. But God doesn't like that. Every part of our life from the beginning, as soon as we wake up till we go to sleep, is regulated by the laws of the Torah. So I'm not going to say that, yeah, difficult, but honestly, these regulations, sanctity, bring a lot of blessing in our marriage, in every part of it, especially in our marriage. Let's go through a couple of them. Again, I'm sure people that are here on the religious side, they keep these laws. But, we might find people that are not religious yet, and they might think it's difficult for them to keep. One of the laws of sanctity is you have to keep laws of family purity. When a woman has the monthly cycle, so the husband and wife can't be intimate unless she goes to the mikveh, right? So, there was one time one of the guys who was looking for a shidduch. So he saw a girl. And he told me, Rabbi, could you please tell this girl to go out with me? I said, she's religious. She keeps laws of family purity. When he found out what, he says, Rabbi, what? I can't be with my spouse for 12 days, forget it. Like, he didn't want to get married to this type of a girl. But again, what I'm going to, this is one of the sanctities of marriage, that, husband and wife cannot spend time any time that they want. It has to be regulated, right? And for men, sometimes this is very, very difficult. Why did really God make this rule that a husband and wife are forbidden at least, I think, 11 days for the Sephardim, at least, right? But the Ashkenazim is at least 12 days. And if let's say the cycle of the woman is 7, 8 days, so that would be basically half of the month, not to be intimate. So before marriage, there's no experience at all, not allowed, not healthy at all. It's not religious at all. Even after they get married, like, because they have to keep Taras HaMishpacha, so they keep away for 12 days in a month or 15 days in a month. Why is this really, like, why is God like so strict? Not only that, Goyim thought that Jews have a problem with intimacy for generations. Now, thank God, they realize what a blessing it is. So this question is asked in the Gemara. I think Rav Meir asks it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So Rav Meir answers, why did God make this rule? He says, because God knows the nature of a person. If you have access to the same pleasure every day, after a while, we either get bored with that pleasure or we get disgusted with it. The best example is, before I got cholesterol, I loved kubide, kebab, right? Now I can't eat it anymore. Baruch Hashem. So now imagine my wife is going to make me kebab, breakfast, lunch, and supper. The first week is awesome. But after 2 weeks, it comes out of your nose, you can't eat it anymore. One of the caterers, there was one of our mashgichim, used to work by a caterer, Simon Catering. So obviously, when he works there, he has to eat. All his food that he ate, he told me himself, was rice and choresh. So he comes home Friday night, his wife serves him again, rice and choresh. He says, believe me, I love to eat dairy Friday night. I'm eating rice and choresh every single day. So he couldn't stand his wife's cooking, not his wife's cooking, the food, because he's eating it every single day. So here Rab Meir says, if a person would have access to his spouse every single day, so after a while they would become bored. They wouldn't get excited at all. But now that part of the month they can be intimate, when she comes from the mikvah, their excitement and their love is like the day that they got married. This is one of the things that we always tell young couples. Again, Shabbat is very important. You think you're not ready for it, so you need time, fine. 2 things we always ask them to keep. Number 1, definitely keep kashrut. Because non-kosher food, God forbid, contaminates the neshama to such a bad level that we become indifferent to godliness. I mean, even let's say if you don't want to go through Kabbalistic explanations, if you look in this week's Parashat Mishpatim that we just read, the Torah says, Anshe Kodesh Tihyun Li. I want it to be a holy nation to me, right? And it says, Basar Trefa Basad Lo Tochelu. If you find non-kosher piece of meat, don't eat it. What's the connection of the two? God says, be holy to me and don't eat meat that is trefa. It's not kosher. So Rashi says, it's interesting, this week's parasha, Rashi says, if you keep the laws of kashrut, you are holy, you belong to me. If you don't keep kashrut, Rashi's language is nevelo tu trefot. It says these 2 things. If you're going to eat non-kosher meat, so then ein chem sheli, you're not mine. Again, the explanation is, a Jew has to have a sensitive soul when we eat non-kosher food, because, as Kabbalah explains, there's a lot of klipa, impurity in that food. It becomes part of our flesh and blood, so that makes us totally insensitive to God, very far from God. So this is one thing we always tell young couples to keep. Number 2 is definitely keep laws of family purity. For a few reasons. Number 1, you always stay close. So you can ask anyone that keeps the family purity. They could be 50, 60 years old. But when she comes from the mikvah, it's a different thing. They never get bored. Besides that, that the Ramban in Parshat, I think is Achremot, he writes down that God forbid, besides, sometimes there is certain, physical diseases that could come for not keeping laws of family. But in addition to that, it has a lot of damage to the soul of the child. He becomes totally insensitive to godliness. Many times that we have children that, are not sensitive to God, they don't even respect their parents. Part of it is because laws of family purity was not kept. So when this child was formed, in the stomach of the mother, there was a certain purity that surrounded, the body of the child, so it loses the sensitivity. I'm going to, end up on this part. There's a letter, there was 3 letters from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that I saw. 3 different women wrote letters to him. These were traditional women going back in the 60s or 70s, before United States became, Baruch Hashem, so religious. You have yeshiva, schools, shuls all over. So there were these traditional people, not Shomer Shabbos, and their children actually converted to Christianity because they met a girl or a boy in college campus and they wanted to marry them. So obviously the girl's condition is, my parents said, no, you can't marry a Jew. I don't know if these days they keep, but again, going to the 60s and 70s, the Christians were more religious. So the boy or the girl actually converted to Christianity. So these ladies write to the Rebbe. It was 3 different letters that I saw. Okay, we are not religious, we're traditional. We never spoke about, Yashka, Yeshu in our houses. Why is this happening to us? So the Rebbe writes down, we can't really give general reasons. There's different reasons for many situations. But most probably, one of the main reasons why such thing happens is probably the parents, talking to the mother, did not keep the laws of family purity. And because of that, the kids' neshama was surrounded, with whatever, some type of impurity, and they're not sensitive to Judaism. So if they have to convert to other religion, so they're not sensitive and they do that. I just want to add, by the way, I don't want to cause, God forbid, any trouble. There was actually a letter from the Rebbe and also from Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. There was one time a girl that was born in a religious family, and then they called a shidduch for her, a boy that was one of the best boys in yeshiva, but he came from a non-religious family. The parents didn't keep Taharat HaMishpacha. So the girl wrote a letter, the family of the girl, to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, should we consider this shidduch? Our daughter born in a religious family, we kept Taharat HaMishpacha. He comes from a non-religious family, he never kept Taharat. The parents didn't keep Taharat HaMishpacha, but he's the best yeshiva boy. So actually the Rebbe, in his letter, and Rabbi Ovadia Yosef answering this person, it says if they really sit and learn Torah, that impurity goes away. Because he's not the cause, the parents didn't keep it. So that impurity, if he really sits and learns Torah, takes it away. So it's interesting, Rabbi Ovadia and the Rebbe said the same thing. That's why Nut is more important. Because when we eat, actually becomes part of us. It's not something from outside. So these are the 2 things that we tell them to keep. There's actually another story that I heard this from Mrs. Carmeli one time. She was giving a lecture. Part of keeping of it, everything in the Torah actually has a medical or health benefit too. Not that this is the reason of the mitzvot. It's not. We keep the mitzvot because God said so. They definitely have a lot of holier reasons, not just the medical or health reasons, but again, because it's God-given, definitely is good for us health-wise too. So the story is that, there was one time, one of the laws of family purity that the rabbis did. According to the Torah, you just wait till the bleeding stops and you go to the mikvah. But the rabbis added certain things, that there has to be 7 clean days, no spotting, after the bleeding stops. So how does a woman know that she's completely clean, no spotting? So they have to check themselves inside the body. They use like these soft cotton things, and they check themselves. So if there's no blood, no stains, after 7 days, when they check it every day, they go to the mikvah. There was this lady that every time she checked herself, she would find a blood stain. So she went to the rabbi and he said, I have a problem, I can't go to the mikvah. So the rabbi said, if this is happening, you have to go to your doctor. So she went to the doctor, and right away they found a cancerous cyst. And he said, how did you find it? It came early enough, so they got rid of it. So he says, how did you realize there was no pain yet? So he said, because according to the rabbis, a woman has to check herself every time. So because I was bleeding, I checked myself, and that's why I came to you. It's amazing, it's a rabbinic law, but it actually has a benefit, even a health benefit. I know my wife said this story one time. We were in somebody's house, and then a few months later on Purim, this lady heard the story, brought a big mishlach manos to my wife. So he said, why? He says, when you said that story, I was going through this problem myself. She was spotting, and when she went to the doctor, they did the surgery, and the cancer didn't spread too much. So that's, not something that's important. Also, another health benefit that we do have, when people keep family purity, this was an article in a newspaper over 50 or 60 years ago. The doctors found out there's a certain cancer, I think it's called the cervical cancer, that a lot of women had, not Jewish ladies. Thank God we don't in old Europe. In old Europe, they would say, if other religions would have diseases, they would say Jews put a spell in the water. That's what pogroms happen. They used to go kill Jews. Thank God in America, people are more educated. So the doctors wanted to find out, how come the non-Jewish women get the cervical cancer more than the Jewish women? So they came with a theory. They said probably because the men circumcised, they do Brit Milah. But the Christians, especially in Europe, they don't do circumcision at all. And because there's an extra skin, a lot of diseases, grow there. And when they're intimate, so whatever you want to call it, goes inside the lady's body and she gets the cancer. The problem with that theory was that even Muslim women got this cancer and they do circumcision. So it has nothing to do with the man. It's interesting. The doctors figured it out. So then they checked. They realized that Jewish men and women separate during those days of the Nida, but other people don't keep it. So they realized that's a cause. Because when the woman is bleeding, if something enters her body from outside, she's more susceptible or whatever, more vulnerable, forgive my English, to get, this type of a thing. This, because whatever, the body, it's open, blood is going out. I don't know the medical thing. You have to ask a doctor exactly what it is. But it's proven by doctors that if something enters her body, so she's more vulnerable of getting diseases. But because these days, Jews, by tradition, the Torah forbids it, this has nothing to do with the mikvah, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Mikvah takes the impurity away. But just the separation, that was the cause that there was no cancer by then. So we see, the beauty of this. Yes, if we keep the sanctity of the Torah, definitely regulates our life. Yeah, we can't do everything that we want, but at the same time, in long term, brings a lot of blessings. So I think we're going to stop here. So we were able to go through 4 out of the 10 commandments. Please let the rabbi know, but I want to give a special thanks, besides to Rabbi Mott that actually gave the place to us. But this whole program happened because of a very humble lady that actually she's here tonight, Mrs. Lisa Coento Zarinia. She was behind this whole thing, pushing for it to happen. She's sitting in the back of the shul. So if you have any comments, either tell Rabbi Mott or Mrs. Zarinia, we're going to take a break after this to see, what people's comments will be. Bezrat Hashem. And if there's time, maybe we continue the last 6. We didn't talk about how to honor in-laws. That's the most scary part. That's the next part. Honor your father and mother. So we're not going to leave it for now. We don't want to give you traumas. We do next time, Bezrat Hashem. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.